The thing about cartoon art is it has the largest vocabulary of any graphic form. You know, of any kind of graphic kind of thing you want to express, a goddamn cartoon will do it better than anything because it can be exaggerated, stretched more than any kind of visual.
Why has it taken the cartoon so long to even have, obviously, we're at an event given the seal of approval by the institution here tonight, and maybe that's as far as it's come. Why has it taken this far? When the institution has a show of high and low art, they put the low art comics in the vitrines and have the high art on the walls. There's still the separation. Well, why?
The cartoon image looks like it's for children. Now, 30 years ago, I would go to Jim Corcoran, at the time was the top art dealer in the West Coast and one of the tops in the world, and I'd show him paintings, and he would go and call his little son in to look at the work, because it was cartoons. He didn't want the responsibility of making a judgment on these cartoons. Now, if the cartoons were copied of a comic strip, then they could slip under the title of being pop art.
But if it was original, it was worse.
Yeah, it was kind of pointless if it was original. You know, you couldn't reference it. People can't. That's why artwork is so successful. It's copied from one thing to another because you can reference it. People don't dare reference things. They have to listen to what other people have to say about things.
Are people afraid of originality? Is the art?
Yeah, they see the stuff getting stale real quick. They're afraid, well, I'll buy this thing and I'll put it on the wall, and then 2 or 3 people come in and go, oh, that's kind of shitty. And they go, oh my gosh, I spent all that money on that shitty thing.
So, other than art as designer label where collectors collect based on the name of who did it regardless of quality, do you think that the art world has this conformity? I mean, I have my opinions about this, that there's an enforced conformity. How have you managed to use any of these forced conformity traits to your advantage?
Well, no. What you're talking about is reacting against it. Now, here's what I'm talking about. You. Because you're the guy that attacked all the top Indians. You attacked them all and coagulate them. Now, see, the philosophy of juxtapose wasn't to castrate these goofballs. It was to let them have their world and find another world. See? Function into another world. Let them have their blue chip world. Let it go any way it wants to go. But there's enough good, interesting artists with imaginations that we can function over on this side. See?
But we've got what you might call the lowbrow juxtapose artists are now in the institution slowly, but it is happening, and every year it's happening more.
Well, and as I said before, there's no such thing as bad art. There's art you're interested in, and there's art that might fall over and kill you. But there's really not bad art. You know, it's all just observation, opinion. There's many people in your field that make a living off defining bad art.
What's the worst review you've ever gotten?
I've got some terrible goddamn reviews. I mean, there's a young gentleman in the New York Times has dedicated his life to this man.
Who's that? As a critic, sometimes when I'm obviously when you're attacking a powerful person, it's just open season. They're a big target. It's a way to certainly establish an idea. But when you're writing about mid-level artists, emerging artists especially, you hopefully want to have an influence on maybe not them, but other artists, especially if they're seeing something trendy, to maybe think that they can move beyond that. Have you ever taken any, have you ever learned anything from a bad review? Have you ever thought, no, they did nail this somewhat inadequacy?
Only thing I've got out of bad reviews is I've increased my vocabulary of how terrible I am.
New words to describe yourself?
Puerile. I've been called, my latest term that they call me puerile, which means childish and silly. I was nadar for a long time. Now I'm puerile.
The one critique of your work that I've seen as a constant, and it's definitely on a formal level relative to the taste of the art world, is that you are, and it's an attempt to minimize you, has been, well, Robert Williams, well, he's a good illustrator. And the implication is illustration is somehow this altar upon which the priest, the artist, performs, and that you are not an artist, you're an illustrator. Is that?
Oh, that came with abstract expressionism. I came out to Los Angeles in '63 and went to the Los Angeles City College in Chenards, and everyone I knew, every artist I knew, thousands of artists were all abstract expressionists. And when I would attempt my art, I was immediately referred to as the illustrator. In other words, pal, you're on the wrong road. You need to start illustrating stories or something. You don't have the soul and the integrity and emotional feeling to know real art, because you just do things you can recognize.
Why has it taken so long? When it seemed that you had all of the ammunition you needed in 1963.
You're going on 60 years of people that went to school and learned abstract expressionists, generation after generation. So it's totally inbred in the entire artistic system.
So even though there's been many movements that have reacted against that initial phase of art history that really set the table against the illustrator, they rigged the game against narrative art. What you're saying is, obviously with even other movements that are still, you could probably walk over to the contemporary and modern way here and see art without images, art as objects, art critiquing society from a level that they're not trying to give anything or analyze it in any way that would privilege the viewer. Why has it taken so long?
Well, it might not change yet. We're not out of the woods on this deal.
You don't see it. You don't see a historic inevitability to.
Well, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of new avenues of graphics to play with. You have to realize, there was 3 major art shows on the West Coast that made West Coast history. The first one was 1915 at the Pan Pacific Exposition. They had a giant art show in San Francisco. And it's the first show on the West Coast that had Impressionism. 40 years after Impressionism was in France, it came to San Francisco. The second most important art show that happened in Los Angeles happened right here at the LA County Art Museum in 1966, was Keynotes in the backseat Dodge.
Very controversial.
That, with the exception of all the group of Ferris Gallery, and he was part of the Ferris Gallery, this was Los Angeles having its first big important personage come out of that group. Okay, the third big thing that happened on the West Coast in Los Angeles was the Helter Skelter show in '92. Now, I was part of that. That then got cut to pieces by all the press in the United States. Like 150 different write-ups on that thing, cut the balls off that art show.
To trash it, I personally had to avoid mentioning that you were part of it.
Okay, now listen. The only write-up about the Helter Skelter show that was not negative came from the Washington Post that said it was wonderful to go inside a museum and feel like you're walking through a Zap comic. In other words, what had happened with the Helter Skelter show was the first time in modern art history that the majority of the work in the show was cartoon oriented.
It definitely was illustrated based too.
Yeah, it was cartoon oriented. You go to the old catalog and you realize the majority of the stuff in there was cartoon oriented. Not one of these intellectual critics pointed out the fact, hey, there's a lot of goddamn cartoons in this thing. So, I think those are the 3 most important things that happened on the West Coast.
Do you think that art can be too graphic and no longer be art? This is the critique, again, of where a lot of the lowbrow is headed. There's a slickness, there's a convenience to the art, and as we certainly just witnessed you working, laboring over this art, but there does seem to be, in the age of the giclée, a lot of this work that people could say you fostered has certainly been, it's pretty easy. It's looking pretty easy. And people with some very simple graphic design talents are people who are now making names for themselves without necessarily the labor and conceptual investment and design.